Hello, this is Kama and welcome. Welcome. This is Come Make We Chat Jamaican Wise Sayings. As usual, we're going to be looking at four Jamaican wise sayings, Jamaican proverbs, and breaking them down so you can understand them. And for those of you who have been trying to learn some Jamaican patois, I hope you're doing well by now. We've done several videos so far on Jamaican patois, Jamaican wise sayings, and I hope you've been taking notes and trying out. Can you hear the rain? It's raining here in Jamaica right now. It is 7:30 p.m. So it's night and it's raining and it's really romantic because right now I'm looking up at my zinc roof. That's a common thing here in Jamaica. Well, it's not so common anymore, but where I grew up in rural Jamaica, the zinc roof was very common, and when it rained, you could hear the pitter patter of the raindrops on the zinc, and especially at night. So that would mean it would be story time, when you gather around and you tell the dopey stories and you'll get scared and but it was fun at the same time. As kids, you love to hear the dopey stories or the ghost stories, but at the same time you were scared out of your wits, right? And when it was time to go to bed, you'd cover up under the sheets. But thankfully, growing up in an extended family, that would mean your cousins would be there in the bed with you, your siblings might be there in the bed with you, so it was all good. And then as you grow older, you realize rain at night is lovers' weather. So yeah, it's lovers' weather. Right now, hoping you're enjoying the pitter patter on the roof while we talk about our Jamaican wise sayings. So the first one I'm going to share with you, actually it's two merged in one, but they have similarities and they have a few differences. So I'm going to explain. So the first one is take your mind off of me. Take your mind off of me. And it's similar to take your eye off of me things or take your eye off of me. So I'm going to tell you the difference and the similarities between these two. So literally it means take your mind off me, or take your eye off me, take your eyes off my things. Don't look at me, don't scrutinize me, don't pay me any mind, just leave me alone. But basically, you're saying, another way we say it is, nobody pre me, nobody penny me, right? Nobody look over you, so nobody, don't let me be the center of attraction for you. So it's a way of saying to people, just leave me be, let me live, let me do as I please, let me stay in my lane, and you stay in your lane. You don't want anybody to have you on their mind, because that now might lead to them trying to do things to hinder your progress, trying to find out what's going on with your life, what's going on with your business, and then they don't pay their business any mind. So you're telling the person, take your mind off of me, right? Just ease off of me, ease off of my name, come off of my name. These are different ways that Jamaicans will tell you to leave me the hell alone. Leave my business alone and attend to yours. Now, it's similar to take your eye off of me things, but that is slightly different. So when you say take your eye off of me things, that means you basically don't want to be sharing your things with the person. So you don't want them to look at it. You don't want them to know that it's there. So you might come up with a plate of food that you don't want to share, and you might say, Take your eye off of my food. Nobody look for my food. Nobody look over yourself. A similar thing that we have for this is, or at least when we were young, when we were kids growing up, you would if you come out with food that you don't want to share with your friends or even your siblings, we had a saying, who beg, nah get, who no beg, no want. Right? Who beg, nah get, who no beg, no want. So who asks for it won't get, and who doesn't ask for it clearly don't want any. So basically, it's saying you're not planning to give anybody anything, which is very mean, But sometimes you have to just defend your things. It's not everything you need to share. We have a tendency to tell kids, you must learn to share, you must learn to give off yourself, you must learn. But sometimes you have to hold back. This is a skill that we also have to teach our children. You don't always have to share. At my school, I always tell my kids, if you lend something to someone and they don't take care of it, don't lend it back to that person. Right? And if you ask for something and the person says no, no hard feelings. They have a right to say no. People don't always have to share their things with you. You don't always deserve for people to share their things with you, or whether or not you deserve it. Not everything needs to be shared. Some things are just for you. So as much as we teach our kids to share, to be sociable, right, to be giving and loving, we also have to teach them that there are times when they have to hold back. There are times when they have to preserve things and conserve things just for them. So we have to teach them to say, take your mind off of me, take your eye off of me things, because this is mine. Yeah, and that's legitimately their right to say. And they don't have to feel any way about it, and you don't have to feel any way about it. If this thing is a special thing to you and you don't want anyone else to partake of that, then you have to have the courage. And yes, I do say courage, because you will have people who make you feel guilty for securing something for yourself. You have people who will try to guilt trip you and make you feel like you're wicked and you're mean and you're cruel for not allowing them to partake. But no, sometimes some things are just for you. And you have to learn to tell people, say, take your mind off of my things, take your eye off of my things. This is mine. This belongs to me, and I'm not going to share. And you don't need to feel guilty about it. I'm not sharing, and I don't feel guilty. I don't feel any way about it, right? Yeah, we have to learn to do that. We have to preserve some things for us. All right, next up. So Jamaican mothers have a saying where we say, him pass the worst, or the pitney pass the worst. You pitney them pass the worst. And what this means is it's a celebratory thing. It's a statement that you make when you know that you have taken your kids past a certain age or past a certain stage in their life, especially if you're coming out of poverty, and especially if maybe the child was a sickly child, or you had a difficult pregnancy, there was a difficult birth, difficult infancy for whatever reason. You have some kids who are sickly and they put their parents through hell from conception to birth to infancy to childhood. Parents have to be up and down, hospital, doctor, bush doctor, all kind of people. The village witches and wizards trying to get some potion to keep this child on the planet, right? Some kids put their parents through a lot of anxiety and stress because something always seems to be wrong with them. And when a parent goes through this, and does everything in their power, and then one day they realize, one day they look at the child and they realize, hey, this child has come through the worst. This child is now able to stand on his own, literally and figuratively, help himself or herself. Or maybe the child had learning difficulties. Maybe the child was a late bloomer, a late starter, was not meeting the milestones, and the parent was worried that this was a special needs child and the child would not be able to fit in, the child would not be able to become a progressive member of society, to make their contribution to society. So maybe you've had to get all kinds of counseling, all kinds of tutor, all kinds of intervention for the child, and then finally one day you look at this child and you realize, hey, my child is fine, my child is good, my child can speak, my child can walk, my child can articulate and speak up for herself or himself. I can send my child to the shop and know that, be confident that he or she's going to come back with the right change and the right things that I sent them for. I can send my child to run an errand and I can be confident that he or she's going to go to the right place and deliver the message, or go and do whatever and come back in real time without getting into any trouble. When you're confident that you have taken your child to the point where the child can be, depending on the age, at any given age, the child can be a good representative of you and of himself and herself. It's a proud feeling as a parent. So I do remember, as a child, hearing my mom or hearing other adults in the community make this statement, referring to their kids, them past the worst. It's a proud feeling, a feeling of accomplishment. And I think it's even stem back way back in the day, even beyond, I would say maybe even, well, in our Caribbean setting, I would say it stem back even to slavery, where that as children, they were forced to work. They were given arduous labor, and many of them did not make it through. And then when we came beyond that, let's say at the turn of the century, the 1900s coming up, a lot of parents, so I'm talking about the Caribbean setting, that's what I know of. So you if you're from a different part of the world, you can tell me what it was like in your neck of the woods. But I know for us in the Caribbean, our women had a tendency to say, we have to have out our lot. As you would hear your grandparents or your parents say, a woman needs to have out her lot. So the women would have several kids. My grandma had 11 kids, right? And this was a common thing in those days, 13, 14, 15 kids, 10 kids. But a lot of times, these children did not make it past infancy, especially back in the early days, at the turn of the century, the 1900s, 1920s, 1930s. So you would have the women having a lot of kids, and several of them would not make it past infancy. So I think it stemmed from that. where you would literally have these kids, and you'd every day you'd be watching them to see if are they gonna make it, are they gonna make it, are they gonna make it, because you had the whooping cough, you had tuberculosis, you had the influenza, you had all kinds of things that could carry them off, right? And several kids succumbed to a lot of these conditions. I remember reading about Marcus Garvey and the fact that his parents had 12 kids, right? Marcus Garvey had 11 siblings. Only himself and one of his sisters survived to become adults, right? So 10 of his siblings died between birth and later part of childhood. They died as children. 10 of them. Can you imagine having 12 kids and only 2 of them survived to become adults? So that's why our grandparents used to have the saying, you know, my pitney past the worst. I'm so glad some my pitney past the worst. Because it was a real thing. You would see this happening to your neighbors, your relatives, where they would have these tons of kids and only a few of them would make it into adulthood, right? So that's where the saying came from. I'm glad Sam passed the worst. Him passed the worst. Now he's able to fend for himself. He can go out now into the world and stand on his own 2 feet. Not that you're not going to give any support to your child after that, but at least you know this child can stand their ground, this child can speak up, this child can do whatever is necessary. So I think for every parent, you want to know that, first of all, you want your children to outlive you. I think I speak for every parent in that. You want to go before them. You don't want them to go before you, right? As a parent. I know I certainly feel this way, and I've heard many parents say that your children should bury you. At the same time, you want to know that while you are on this earth, you do everything that is possible to ensure that when you leave, your children, no matter what age, your children will be okay. They will be okay. And you really hope and pray that you are able to stay and see them grow into adulthood, see them be able to take care of themselves, see them stable, you know, financially, emotionally, physically, they're okay. As a parent, that's really what you want. Because it's like from conception onwards, you're holding this person's hand, you're ushering this person into the world, and you have this strong sense of duty to take them to the point where you can safely let them go, right? I remember I remember when my daughter went off to college, so she got a scholarship in the United States to go to college. And so she was 16, and I remember we flew up to New York en route to Chicago, where her college was, right? And I was going through these emotions of thinking, because my daughter, up until that point, my kids were all homeschooled, so they saw me 24/7, right? 24/7 every day. And so she was going off to a new country, great big college, and I was taking her to get her settled into her college space. And I remember, so we're in New York, and I looked up at the billboard, and they were advertising. I think it was a, I don't remember if it was a movie or it was some Broadway musical or something like that. But the title of it was This is where I leave you. I remember that was the title. This is where I leave you. And that came home to me really deeply, because here was I taking my daughter to this point, and I was saying, this is where I leave you. Not that I wouldn't be there anymore for support, but she was branching off, right, into the world. So as parents, we take great pride in knowing you take your pitney past the worst, him past the worst, or she passed the worst. It's something to be proud about. All right, so the next saying. So in Jamaica, we have a saying, craven, choke, puppy. Craven, choke, puppy. And by craven, we mean greed. You know, when you're greedy, in Jamaica, if you're greedy, we say you're craven. Or your wanga gut, your wanga belly, and yummy yummy. But of course, this most sayings, they're not just for their literal value, but also for their life lessons, right? So craven, choke, puppy, and of course, puppy is a small dog, right? So you can just imagine the puppy in the yard, and you throw food to them, because that's typically what we do, you know, growing up. When you finish eating the dinner and you have whatever is left over, that's what you would feed to the dogs. So you'd scrape it, and then you might have a basin in the yard over where, you know, that's where the dogs stay, and you scrape it to them, and you see all of them running. And sometimes some of them were greedy and they didn't want the others to feed, and so they would be, you know, trying to gobble up everything, and literally you can choke, just like with anybody else trying to eat too fast, you can choke. So the craving here has to do with greed, you know, trying to take it all for yourself and not considering that others have needs as well. You're not considering the needs of others. You're not thinking of sharing. So a similar proverb in English would be grasp all, lose all. Grasp all, lose all. You want everything, trying to grasp everything, and you lose everything. Greed is something that I cannot stand in people. It's very, it turns me off to see someone who is greedy. No, don't confuse this with being ambitious, right? I believe people should be ambitious, and you should want to develop yourself to the utmost and try to make the best for yourself. But greed is a different thing. Greed is when you know that this particular thing is supposed to be for others as well as yourself, and you want it all. That's different from having ambition and trying to develop yourself in your lane to the best of your ability, and trying to gain as much as you can from your skills legitimately, all the profits that can come from honing your skill. That's a totally different thing, and I'm all for that. Ambition is something that we should have. Ambition is something that propels us into the future. It secures your place in the future, and it secures your place with bounty, bountiful, but not for you to be taking what belongs to others, or feeling that you're the only person who should have, and you're engulfing everything and not wanting anybody else to partake of what's there for everyone. That kind of attitude can make you choke. And in choking, it's not going to benefit you in the long run. It's not going to benefit you. So you have to consider others. So it's like a balance between the first proverb that we talk about, take care of family things, And at the same time, understanding that sometimes you have to share. So, as with everything in life, we have to try to strike that balance and know when each one is appropriate, when you need to demand your space, and when you need to share that space or share that thing. So, the last proverb we're going to look at is the saying that we have in Jamaica: one pitney and a pitney. It sounds weird, but yeah, we have this saying: one pitney and a pitney. That means one child is not really a child. What on earth could that mean? One child is not really a child. So it's like they're saying, if you're an only child, you don't really experience childhood the way childhood should be experienced. And so it's not encouraged for you to have just one child, because you rob that child of a real childhood. So basically, they're saying children need siblings, or at least cousins. They need playmates, because this is how they build their social skills. This is how they learn to negotiate. This is how they learn to share. This is how they learn to argue. This is how they learn to fight for their rights. This is how they learn to take a stand. This is how they learn to interact with others. And as a mother, I can tell you that I see a great difference with those parents who have only one child, how they parent, as opposed to parents who have several kids. I have 4, and I observe, like, and even at my school, when I have to interact with parents, those who have only one, it's a different kind of vibe from those who have several kids to deal with. So it's like the parenting skills are not really honed, and certain parenting skills just don't get the chance to come out because it's just the one you have. So, for example, when you have several kids and they're at each other, and you have to be teaching them how to cooperate, how to share, how to take turns, how to think about the feelings of others. If you just have one, this just doesn't come up. It never comes up, because it's just the one. Whatever is there is for the one, right? But there are also other aspects to this, and we can think of even back in the day, just like with the in past the worst thing came from back in the day, when it was really an arduous task to get through infancy and childhood. If we think of back in the day, when society was more agrarian and we were in the rural parts of the country, you had a little farming going on. And so you needed more hands on the farm, right? Having one child just not gonna cut it. It's just not gonna cut it. So those families tended to have several kids to help with the chores, to help with the work, even to help with the babysitting. As the first set gets older, they are the ones who help to babysit the younger ones, because the parents were really, really busy at work. And you also wanted to know that somebody is coming up to take over when you can't work anymore, you can't go out in the fields anymore. You have 8 sons, 8 sons ready to take over the reins. You have 8 daughters ready to take over the reins, right? And outside of that, outside of the chores, helping with the chores, children need playmates. And they need these playmates in order to build their social skills. This is how it is looked at. So there's a saying in Jamaica here, and I think it extends to the Caribbean. The women at least back in the day, it's not so much now, but the women were told you need to have out your lot. What is your lot? You need to have as many children as naturally come. So of course there wouldn't be your grandma and your great grandma, they wouldn't be exposed to birth control and contraceptive methods, or even the idea of it or the concept of it was alien to them. They just knew, you had intercourse, and so it's unprotected, and they were likely to become pregnant. So you have that child, and the child maybe breastfeed for a while, you start intercourse again, you're likely to become pregnant. So you might have, within the space of a year or two, she's pregnant again, another year or two, she's pregnant again. So multiple births was just the common thing, right? But with the poverty and the low standard of living, the disease conditions that were prevalent, many of the infants did not survive, or they got to a point in childhood and they did not survive. They weren't viable based on the social conditions. So that's why our foreparents said one pitney and a pitney. It's like you put in all your eggs in one basket, because you want to know, you want to leave a legacy. And since you weren't sure if this one dege one would make it, why on earth would you risk just having the one dege one, as we call it, one dege pitney, right? So it was seen as a risky thing, really, to just have one. What would happen if you lose that one? Or even two, three. That was not the norm. The norm was more like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That was more the norm, right? And you can just imagine what childhood was like. Can you imagine growing up in the country areas and you have 12 siblings and you're running through the bushes and making noise and playing games and everybody having fun. I remember growing up in the rural areas, and we had siblings, cousins, friends, neighbors all over. Everybody just played together. That is what childhood. That's the best part of childhood. So this is what people mean when they say one pitney and a pitney. I mean, you just have the one, and can you imagine that child at home? It must be a lonely thing to be an only child. Were you an only child? Let me know what it was like. Did you feel lonely? Did you feel, looking back now, do you feel like you missed out on the real childhood when you hear other people talking about their childhood and what they did? Do you feel like something was missing from your childhood as an only child? Let me know. Let me know what your childhood was like. And maybe now you have several kids. How do you compare the experience that they seem to be having with the experience that you had as an only child? One dege pitney. One dege pitney. I remember a couple of parents at my school, they have one child, right? And they refer to this child as their one egg, my one egg. And they're really, really protective. And this child gets everything. Everything is invested in this child. So what happens if this child doesn't make it? Who do you have? This is the thought. Who do you fall back on? It's maybe you shouldn't be thinking of kids in that way, but it's just a reality. Because if you have 4 and something happened to one, really and truly you can take consolation in the other 3. you're gonna mourn, you're gonna go through the trauma, but you will have comfort in the other three. If you just have the one and you lose the one, it's even, I can imagine that it would be even more devastating. That's just my take on it. Maybe because I have four. At the same time, if you know in your heart of hearts that one is all you want, one is all you can afford, one is all you need, then by all means, stop it at one. All right, so those are the 4 Jamaican proverbs for this week. Next week, we're going to look at 4 more. And I keep telling you, I have tons and tons and tons of them. So we're never, ever going to run out. Okay, so I'll see you next week.